What if Asia's biggest male stars were living a truth the world never dared to ask? These 10 famous gay men, from K-pop idols to cinema legends, didn't just rise to fame, they redefined what queerness looks like across a continent. Their stories are bold, beautiful, and deeply human. Watch till the end. Drop a comment to tell us which story moved you the most. And don't forget to support LGBTQ+ vibes by hitting like, subscribe, and turning on notifications. Both. Natapong Chinsaponsap. At first glance, he looked like every Thai celebrity heartthrob, tall, charming, effortlessly camera-ready. Both, born Natapong Chinsaponsap in 1988, was once the face you couldn't miss. He walked the runways, posed for glossy magazines, and lit up screens as a charismatic VJ for Channel V Thailand. His presence was magnetic, cool without trying, kind without effort. But while the world saw a rising star, Both was quietly charting a different path, one far from the glitz of the entertainment world. Because behind that captivating smile was a man holding a dental mirror, not a microphone. What many fans didn't know or couldn't believe was that Both wasn't just acting. He was studying, grinding, building something real. Dentistry wasn't a backup plan, it was his calling. And after years of balancing celebrity appearances with textbooks and training, he made a bold move most stars wouldn't dare. He stepped away from the limelight and opened his own clinic. Today, Both is a licensed dental surgeon with a practice of his own, healing people, one patient at a time, with the same quiet care that made his performances so unforgettable. But no story about Both would feel complete without mentioning the man who turned his life into a love story that fans still hold close. New Year. His real name is Kitiwut Sawat Demilan, a former performing arts student with a flair for both drama and vulnerability. While Both grounded himself in science, New Year dove into the world of freelance acting and modeling, chasing moments, characters, and connection. When the two were cast together in the hit series Together With Me, it felt electric. Their chemistry wasn't just scripted, it was soulful. Fans around the world felt it, and deep down, many hoped it was real. Off-screen, that spark quietly caught fire. What started as co-stars grew into confidants, then into something more. But they never made a show of it. There were no headlines or viral declarations, just glimpses. A touch here, a photo there, of two people living, working, and loving together. In a region where LGBTQ+ visibility still battles deep-rooted silence, Both and New Year never asked for the spotlight, but they took it and made it softer, safer, warmer. They became icons not because they were loud, but because they were authentic. Today, they remain one of the most beloved queer couples in Thailand, admired for their grace, intimacy, and the quiet revolution they represent. Their love is steady, private but not hidden, gentle but never weak. And maybe that's what makes it resonate most. It doesn't need to scream to be heard. In every smile, every post, every ordinary day they choose each other, they show us that real love, queer love, doesn't need to ask for permission. There's something striking about a man who doesn't rush, who knows exactly how much space to take and when to let silence speak louder than charm. New Year, whose real name is Kitiwut Sawat Demilan, never chased the spotlight. It found him anyway. As a performing arts graduate, he stepped into the world of acting and modeling with intention, not to impress, but to express. His face may have graced fashion campaigns, but he's never been a product of image. His appeal lies in the way he holds tension between elegance and unpredictability, control and chaos. He wasn't molded for mass appeal. He was made for moments. And when the camera lingers, you understand why. He invites curiosity, not through loud performances, but through presence that whispers rather than shouts. What sets New Year apart isn't ambition, it's instinct. He understands rhythm, emotion, timing, the kind of unteachable awareness that separates actors from storytellers. In every frame, he's doing more than playing a role. He's letting you in. When he starred in Together With Me, his on-screen relationship with Both caught fire, not because it was sensational, but because it felt lived in. Every glance, every pause between words carried emotional weight. But while fans became enamored with the romance, New Year never let that define his identity. His relationship with Poemth, both may have turned heads, but he remained grounded in his own journey. Still booking shoots, still shifting between roles, still carving out space in an industry that rarely makes room for soft, queer masculinity without compromise. He offered something different, not rebellion, but refusal. A refusal to shrink, to explain, to perform queerness on anyone's terms but his own. Now, as a public figure who walks the line between intimacy and enigma, New Year embodies a kind of quiet revolution. He doesn't declare, he demonstrates. Through every image he posts, every look he crafts, every role he chooses, he's showing a generation of queer youth what it means to be fluid, fearless, and free. And while his energy may feel dreamlike, his message is sharp. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to be honest. His story lingers not because it demanded your attention, but because it earned your respect. And as we continue our journey through Asia's most captivating queer figures, the next name takes us in a wildly different direction. One where confidence is loud, fashion is fearless, and self-expression knows no rules. Meet Chang Siu-hui, Thailand's unapologetic ambassador for chaos and sexiness. Shia Chang, he didn't become famous with red carpets or magazine covers. There was no viral scandal, no overnight stardom. Shia Chang, born in 1987, built his life one careful step at a time. With a white coat instead of a costume and a clinic instead of a stage, he rose not as a celebrity, but as something far rarer, a man of quiet power in a world that often silences people like him. Based in Beijing, he owns and operates his own dermatology clinic, a space where confidence is restored not just through skincare, but through safety, trust, and gentle presence. Patients know him not only as a doctor, but as a listener, someone who sees people for who they are, not just what they bring in. And perhaps that's the thread that's woven through his entire story. Seeing clearly, living honestly, choosing softness in a world that often demands the opposite. But Shia Chang's impact goes far beyond medicine. In May 2016, he did something that turned heads and touched hearts across China. He got married. Not in secret, not in exile, but boldly, proudly, right where he lived. In a country where same-sex marriage remains unrecognized by law and queer couples often live in the shadows, his decision to publicly wed his longtime partner was nothing short of revolutionary. There were no news crews, no celebrity endorsement, just two men, deeply in love, making a promise to each other and to the world. Their ceremony wasn't a protest, but it was political. Their love wasn't a performance, but it was powerful. And most of all, it was real. For many, they became a symbol, not because they tried to be, but because they simply were. Living proof that commitment, family, and happiness aren't reserved for straight people. That queer love, too, deserves to be celebrated out loud. Today, Shia Chang continues to live his life with grace and quiet dignity, balancing the roles of healer, husband, and symbol without ever seeking the spotlight. He reminds us that being visible doesn't always mean being loud. Sometimes it means holding hands in public, wearing your ring with pride, opening the doors of your clinic and your heart without shame. In a landscape where queer stories are still too often erased or rewritten, his remains refreshingly untouched. Simple, but profound. And while some trailblazers lead with stillness, others crash through boundaries with color, confidence, and unapologetic flair. Enter Denny Han, the fashion-forward firebrand redefining queer masculinity in modern China, one bold statement at a time. Some men live to blend in. Denny Han was born to break the frame. With razor-sharp cheekbones, runway-perfect style, and a presence that feels both cinematic and confrontational, he doesn't ask for your attention, he owns it. Known across China for his high-fashion flair and boundary-pushing aesthetic, Denny doesn't fit into boxes. He burns them. He's not a singer, not a model, not an actor in the traditional sense. He's something new, a fashion provocateur, digital tastemaker, and unapologetic architect of his own image. Whether strutting in structured leather on the streets of Shanghai or appearing barefaced and raw in front of the camera, Denny understands something that few dare to embrace. Style isn't about fitting trends. It's about declaring who you are, even when it makes others uncomfortable. What sets Denny apart isn't just what he wears, but how he moves through the world wearing it. In a society that still clings to rigid ideas of masculinity, Denny Han dismantles expectations with every photo, every pose, every silence. He reclaims the feminine, not as weakness, but as weapon, pairing pearls with power, softness with swagger. To many young queer men across Asia, he is more than an influencer. He's a permission slip. Living proof that confidence isn't about seeking approval. It's about living so truthfully that approval becomes irrelevant. He doesn't campaign, he doesn't lecture, he just is. And in being so unapologetically himself, he forces everyone around him to reflect on what they fear and why. And yet, for all his boldness and personal mystique, Denny's most powerful statement may have nothing to do with fashion and everything to do with love. Alongside Chang Xiaohui, a dermatologist with a quiet heart and steady hand, Denny forms one half of one of China's most admired gay couples. Denny and Xiaohui made history in their own way when they chose to marry in May 2016, a bold, intimate act of defiance and devotion in a country where same-sex marriage remains legally unrecognized. Their union wasn't about headlines, and together, they showed an entire generation that being queer in China doesn't mean living in the shadows. Sometimes it means living fully, beautifully, and together. But behind the bold visuals is someone deeply intentional. Denny's curated existence isn't hollow, it's strategic. Every post is a challenge, every look is a message. And though he rarely shares the intimate details of his private life, his silence isn't distance, it's discipline. He's crafting something larger than persona. He's building legacy. And that legacy, much like his wardrobe, refuses to be simple, safe, or small. And while Denny expresses his truth through fearless fashion, our next story unfolds more quietly. Through compassion, clarity, and emotional depth. Let's meet Shen Yulun, a man whose influence begins not with a pose, but with presence. Yulun Shen never needed a stage to be unforgettable. He wasn't the loudest in the room, and he never tried to be. But when he spoke, slowly, deliberately, like every word cost something, people listened. There's a kind of gravity to him, the kind that comes not from fame, but from having survived things quietly. He didn't wear pride like a badge or identity like a performance. Instead, he carried his truth like a carefully folded letter, worn at the edges, sealed with longing, and meant only for those who could read between the lines. In China's evolving queer landscape, he became a rare figure. Not an activist, not an influencer, but a witness. A man who didn't lead marches but held space for others and eventually for himself. But long before the calm came the chaos. Before the wisdom came the heartbreak. He was just a high school student when he met Kyn Shen, the kind of connection that doesn't ask for permission. 2 boys, 1 classroom. A glance that lasted too long, a hand brushed too quickly. It wasn't a love story they were taught to want, but it was real, achingly, urgently real. And like so many queer first loves, it bloomed in secret and broke under pressure. The rumors were cruel, the parents were harsher. In the end, they walked away, not from each other, but from the version of themselves the world wasn't ready for. But even after the silence, even after the years, that early love didn't fade. It evolved. It grew roots in the cracks. As he got older, Yulun Shen stopped trying to explain himself. He no longer needed to justify softness or mourn what could have been. He began to write, not to tell the world who he was, but to remind others who they still were beneath the hurt. His words weren't declarations, they were invitations. And somewhere between reflection and forgiveness, the past started knocking again. After nearly a decade of quiet devotion, they came full circle. Publicly dating in August 2012 and officially announcing their marriage in February 2016. And behind their love story is a legacy of success. Yulun Shen, far from just a soft-spoken soul, is a hotel manager and entrepreneur. owning 3 companies in beauty and fashion, and investing steadily in education. He's also an accomplished writer with 2 published books under his name. Together, they turn pain into poetry and distance into devotion. That brings us to Kyn Shen, the boy he once kissed behind a closed door, now reborn as a man who doesn't wait for permission. A fearless writer, a bold creator, a living testament to what happens when you stop shrinking and start taking up space. He was never built for the background. If Yulun Shen was stillness, Kyn was the spark, electric, unfiltered, impossible to miss. While others learned to blend in, Kyn learned to stand out, not to provoke, but to survive. He didn't just break the rules, he rewrote them in ink, wrapped them in glitter, and dared the world to read. Born in China, shaped by life abroad, Kyn earned his master's degree from the University of Stirling in the UK. But his real education? It lived in the stories he told, the businesses he built, and the unapologetic identities he refused to shrink. A novelist, an entrepreneur, a force of nature, Kyn built his own spotlight and stood firmly in it. Kyn doesn't write to entertain, he writes to awaken. His words slice, confront, and hold up a mirror to the world that says, look closer. Whether in essays, fiction, or midnight musings to thousands of online followers, his voice is never timid and never arrogant. It's the voice of someone who's been silenced and won't be again. And when he writes about queerness, it's not from the sidelines, it's from the center. Bold, claimed, whole. In business, Kyn doesn't just sell beauty products, he sells liberation. His brand is a celebration of self-expression in all its raw, chaotic, radiant forms. For Kyn, beauty is not about perfection, it's about ownership of your body, your story, your truth. Maybe that's why his reunion with Yulun Shen didn't feel like just a love story. It felt like poetry in motion. 2 souls shaped by different currents, finding a shared rhythm again. But here's the truth. Kyn Shen doesn't exist to complete someone else. He exists to be whole, and to show others that wholeness is not only possible, it's powerful. His journey is a blueprint for queer liberation, creative rebellion, and radical self-love. And now, as we turn the page, we meet someone who burns with that same fire, but channels it through music, fame, and the vibrant youth culture of modern China. Get ready for Jao Shangha, China's unapologetically queer idol who turned pop into protest and stage lights into truth. 7. Jao Shangha. Not all legends come with loud entrances. Some just show up, quietly, consistently, and never leave. That's the kind of legacy Jao Shangha carries. With his calm demeanor, classic style, and grounded presence, he feels like someone who belongs to a different era. One where loyalty mattered more than fame, and actions spoke louder than followers. Jao Shangha never chased the spotlight, yet it often found him. A man of few words and steady steps, he's become a symbol of enduring queer love in a world that often celebrates what's fast and fleeting. In a digital age obsessed with viral moments, he's proof that consistency is its own kind of charisma. What makes Jao Shangha stand out isn't controversy or performance, it's character. Over the years, he's earned the admiration of thousands, not with headlines, but with how he lives. Humble, generous, and rooted in care. Whether sharing glimpses of his daily life or supporting community causes behind the scenes, he's the kind of figure people quietly respect. Someone who leads without posturing. He doesn't dress for drama, post for clout, or speak just to be heard. And yet, when he does speak, whether about love, family, or personal growth, people pause because they know it comes from a place of truth. Jao Shangha represents something rare in the modern queer landscape: stillness. Not stagnation, but the kind of inner peace that comes from knowing exactly who you are and who you love. His long-term relationship, marked by loyalty rather than spectacle, has become a quiet inspiration to many. In a culture constantly chasing the next thing, he reminds us of what lasts. That love, when built slowly and held gently, doesn't need to scream. It just needs to show up, every day. There's something about Fluke Nituch that lingers, a softness in his gaze, a quiet ache in his performances, a presence that doesn't shout for attention, but stays with you long after the credits roll. Born in 1996, Fluke didn't set out to become a symbol, but with every role he's taken, he's become one. For sensitivity, for queer visibility, for love that dares to feel deeply. His breakout role in My Bromance introduced him to a generation of viewers who had never seen two boys fall in love on screen with such tenderness. But it was Until We Meet Again that cemented him as a force. As Farm, he carried an entire love story on trembling hands and tear-filled eyes, making millions believe in soulmates and in the power of second chances. Fluke isn't just an actor, he's an emotional translator. With every glance, every pause, every broken breath, he brings pain, joy, confusion, and longing to life with rare honesty. His beauty may have drawn people in, that boyish charm, those soft features, that fragile intensity, but it's his vulnerability that keeps them there. In a genre that often leans into fantasy, Fluke brings realism. He doesn't just play love, he feels it. And that emotional generosity has made him more than just a BL star. He's become a touchstone for young queer audiences across Asia. At a time when many actors still dodge questions about identity, Fluke stepped into the light. He came out as gay with quiet courage, not for applause but for truth, and in doing so he gave countless fans permission to do the same. What makes Fluke so beloved isn't just his performances, it's his presence. Humble, soft-spoken, grounded. In an industry built on spectacle, he leads with sincerity. Whether on stage, in interviews, or behind the scenes, Fluke carries himself with a kind of emotional integrity that's hard to fake. He doesn't pretend to have it all figured out, and that's exactly why people trust him. He reminds us that queerness can be gentle, that masculinity can coexist with tears, that sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is feel openly. And maybe that's Fluke's real gift. Not just the ability to act, but the ability to reflect our fears, our hopes, our truths. And as his story continues to unfold, one thing is certain. Fluke isn't just playing parts. He's changing lives, one quiet, powerful role at a time. Some voices just hit different. They don't just carry notes, they carry emotion. And Pongsak Natapong, known to fans simply as Alf, has that kind of voice. Born in 1985, Alf didn't just enter the Thai music scene, he moved it. With a tone that melts, uplifts, and breaks hearts all in a single verse, he quickly became a staple of love ballads and soul-stirring anthems. His voice is velvet soaked in sorrow and joy and everything in between. But Alf's gift isn't just technical, it's emotional. Every time he steps on stage, he doesn't just sing, he bleeds. And the audience, they don't just listen, they feel. For years, Alf was adored for his music, his gentle presence, his boy-next-door charm, his ability to make even the most guarded listener believe in heartbreak and healing. But in 2013, he did something that shifted his story forever. He came out as gay. In a region where public figures often dance around the subject of sexuality, Alf didn't flinch. He didn't stage a spectacle, he simply told the truth. And in doing so, he broke a silent barrier, not with rage, but with resonance. His coming out wasn't just a personal milestone, it was a cultural one. Because when someone like Alf, beloved, respected, mainstream, chooses visibility, it changes the conversation for everyone. He didn't have to yell to be heard. He simply stood there, fully himself, and let the world adjust. Since then, Alf has continued to do what he's always done best, sing from the soul. But now, there's something deeper, beneath the surface. His songs hit harder, his words carry weight, because now, fans don't just hear the music, they see the man behind it. And what they see is courage wrapped in kindness, a performer who didn't let the industry define him, a man who turned vulnerability into power. Aov reminds us that being an artist isn't about perfection, it's about truth. And whether he's delivering a heart-wrenching ballad on national TV or offering a soft smile in an interview, he stays grounded in who he is, unapologetically gay, unapologetically Aov. In a world that often asks queer people to hide, he sings louder, clearer, braver. And with that, our journey across Asia's vibrant queer icons comes to a close. 10 stories, 10 lives, 10 ways to say, we're here, we're real, and we've always been worth watching. What if love didn't whisper, but roared across a continent? These 10 queer men from Asia turned silence into strength, shame into power, and made the world pay attention. If their stories made you feel something, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and subscribe to LGBTQ+ Vibes to keep these voices alive. Your click keeps the truth loud.